we're going to make a pour-over style coffee, but in a basket, using the advanced shot editor on the DE1. So let me go into my profile here that we've created now that the advanced profile editor is actually available. You see I have a number of steps here on the left: pre-wet bloom, pour 1, pause, pour 2, pause, last pour, drain. So I set this up to sort of mimic the way that I would make a pour over in my ceramic single hole dripper. Just, I'm experimenting. We're kind of figuring out whether I can do this or not. You can see I'm starting off with a 200 degree water temperature at 2 milliliters a second. My duration is 23 seconds. And I had originally put this in, I'm actually going to reduce that time a little bit, because I originally put this in for about, I wanted it to be essentially twice the dose of coffee, but I've noticed that pre-wet stage, I'm dripping through the bottom, and I really only want to just wet the grounds for a bit. So it's a bit of an experiment here. So 15 seconds, that will put 30 milliliters of coffee, water into the coffee. So we'll go from there. The next step I have is a bloom, which is really, you see that there's zero flow for 15 seconds. And right now I'm using duration, not volume. So zero flow for 15 seconds. That's basically just a pause to allow the grounds themselves to bloom. And then I have a series of pours and pauses. So you see here I have 2 milliliters a second for 50 seconds. So basically that's 100 milliliters of water that I'm pouring at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I then have a pause step built in for another 15 seconds just to allow any pressure or any additional water that's sitting on top of that coffee bed to drain off. Pour 2 is largely the same, 50 seconds at 2 milliliters a second. And what I've been trying actually is I'm doing a little bit of temperature profiling here. I'm actually going to drop the second pour to 198 degrees, and then the last pour, we're going to drop that down to 196. This came as a recommendation from Scott Rao on pour-overs, just reducing the temperature of the water as we pour to hopefully extract fewer of the bitter towards the end of the pour. That's the idea there. And then my last step is a drain, which is basically just kind of allowing any additional water to drip out before the machine opens up its flush valve. So that's it. And a couple of other things you can do here with the advanced shot editor is I can choose to make the transitions between steps fast or slow. Fast is obviously what I have set going there. I can also choose pressure as my target rather than flow. So each one of these steps can be profiled based on pressure or flow. And then I can even choose to move on to the next step if I achieve certain factors. So I haven't gotten into this stuff really yet beyond what we're doing here, because this really just got released. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to fire this off. First things first, 20 grams into my holder here. Cool. Okay. So what I'm actually going to do with that 20 grams of coffee is I'm going to show you over here what I've done. So I actually have this is a 20 gram VST basket that I've actually put an AeroPress filter in as my paper filter. This has been working really well for me, so I'm going to keep doing it. It prevents my coffee from getting sludgy. It kind of holds back those fines. And I just basically run a flush through it from the Decent just to get some hot water through the paper and rinse the filter, and then I just sort of pack it into the corner. So it only takes a second, and that's been working. So now I'm just going to dump the coffee from my holder into here, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I've got 20 grams of coffee in my portafilter, and I've got this ground for pour over, so this is not espresso grind. I'm not tamping or anything, and I'm just going to throw it into the machine and get it started. Okay, I'm going to hit OK, hit start. We'll do our final preheat here, just like before. Now, one of the things on the side here you'll notice is it still says pre-infusion pouring in total. It doesn't list out the steps for this particular quote-unquote shot, but you'll see it on the graph. And since this is going to take basically 3 minutes, I'm just going to pause it between phases, so you don't need to see every single phase. But right now we're actually doing the pre-infuse itself, so you can see that what I call sort of the pre-wet and now we're at a pause. So you can see the flow rate go from 2 milliliters a second down to 0. My temperature right now is above that 200 line, but what I've seen in the past is that it will drop down and actually get really, really close. The other thing that you'll see is that my pressure stays right at 0. We're really not making any pressure at all, which is what I have. That's my desire. And then in the cup here, I'm basically making, you know, my kind of own personal Keurig coffee, I suppose. So we're pouring at a nice slow rate. So be back as we get more. Okay, now we're arriving at the second pour. You see that we just went through that first pause phase, and that allowed for the coffee to kind of drain out of the portafilter basket. So this kind of, for me anyway, it mimics that, you know, when I'm pouring with a kettle over a pour over, kind of allowing the water to settle through as it drains, as it draws through. And now you can also see on my temperature line that we hit that 200 degrees during that pause, and now we're down to the 198 that I specified for the second draw. So we'll come back to the third one. Okay, so here's the third and final pour, and so you've gone through that pause again. Our temperature profile is pretty darn close to my targets. You can see the temperature on the right hand side too. Our goal right at this point is 196, and that's just about where we've hit. And what should be poured here is about 350 milliliters of water to my 20 gram shot. So I'm going for the, you know, SCAA target of 18 to 1 essentially. And that's that. I can actually see that the total volume it's showing on the right is 400 milliliters, which that actually might be the case of what I've gotten here. And that may be due to some changes that I've been making with calibration. I will check. But here's my lovely mug of nice clean pour over coffee. I'm also going to do, I'll probably post it on the either in the comments or right here on the video. I've been using my refractometer to test the total dissolved solids out of this too, because I'm trying to nail kind of a 1.25% TDS. The last ones I've been making with the grind settings I was around 1.5, 1.6. So it was a little high on strength, which I like, but I'm trying to get it right to where the recommendation is anyhow. So now we can see the, you know, our line where we had our flow rate throughout the shot. Pressure stayed at 0 because we're basically just, you know, dropping water into a coarse ground, basically, you know, a much better than Keurig or, you know, pour over version. So what I like about doing this actually, it gives me more options and more variety with what to do with coffee, especially if I have some lighter roasted coffee or I just want to make a different type of coffee for the day, you know, a bigger drink. I can kind of set it and forget it. So I've made a few of these now, which is, you know, it's just super nice to be able to throw that in there and have a full cup of coffee. Browns look like this when they come out. If I knock it out of the portafilter, I have that nice puck with my paper filter on it. Filter's pretty clean. I'll give that a rinse and we're good to go. So questions, comments? Do you guys like pour overs? I'll see you later.